Hello, I'm Kelly Ritalik-Ridley, President of Angus Genetics Incorporated, or AGI, a wholly owned subsidiary of the American Angus Association. I've been asked today to review some of the ongoing research projects that are led by AGI on behalf of the American Angus Association's membership. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of today's presentation, I thought it would be a good opportunity to take a step back and try to understand why AGI was created and formed as one of the 4 entities of the American Angus Association. As most of you know, AGI was established in 2007, so it is the youngest entity of the American Angus Association, but we were really established to perform genetic evaluations, conduct research and development, improve new science and technologies for use by Angus cattle producers. I think it's also important to understand what was happening inside of the beef industry, and specifically the beef genetic world, around the time that AGI was formed. First, there was a transition from breed associations taking their data to land-grant universities to run their genetic evaluations. This was something that breed associations historically did because of the fact that land-grant universities had access to the largest computers out there that could crunch these complex calculations needed to present Angus producers and other seed stock producers with expected progeny differences. As computers became more affordable and land-grant universities started to get out of that business, AGI took on the American Angus Association's genetic evaluation, as well as some other clients, to provide genetic tools to the beef industry. At the time, the new science on the horizon were genomics. We knew genomics were going to be a transformative piece in beef cattle genetic evaluations, and the American Angus Association wanted to ensure the necessary research and development focus remained on such a high priority item. That alone is still our continued process here at AGI. Our current mission statement is to lead genetic change for the beef industry in cooperation with Angus families. And how we do that and why we do that is for those same reasons that AGI was established in 2007. I know on any given day, whether it's a staff member here at 3201 Frederick or a regional manager out on the road, we'll get asked a plethora of questions around the services and programs that the American Angus Association offered. Just a few days ago, I was asked anywhere from where is my DNA sample and why aren't my results back, to how do I contemporary group my data on my ET calves, to where can I find the Angus Convention registration link? And finally, can you tell me a little bit about the Angus Link program? I'm a commercial producer thinking about using it. Because of all these services that are provided by the American Angus Association, we know that we need to make sure that we carve out the time and the focus to make sure that we focus on genetic evaluation tools and the research that you all as members of the American Angus Association told us were some of the highest priorities for you in the coming years. That's where AGI comes into play. But let's just take a few more minutes so that we can understand the relationship and the overlap of the hand-in-glove relationship that we have with the American Angus Association here at AGI. While we do conduct a lot of research on behalf of the American Angus Association membership, I think it's important for you all to know as members that the ownership of the data, the genotypes, the pedigrees lies within the American Angus Association. They allow us as AGI staff members to have access to that data in order to perform the research duties that are described by the American Angus Association. We have this breed improvement committee that really sits as a conduit between the American Angus Association and AGI to send the needs from the American Angus Association down to AGI, where we conduct the research and development. And when we want to make sure that that research and development is at a place where it can be fed back out to the membership, those decisions lie with that Breed Improvement Committee and the American Angus Association Board of Directors. And that's how we continue to interact with one another, and how our first category of research, when we look at our historical projects, really comes to be. Our first set of research I'm going to touch on here today that we've historically done are around those novel phenotype research products. Most of these novel phenotypes have been researched and done over the decades, but really the projects I'm going to focus on today have been those projects that really have been done within the last 10 to 15 years. Previous to the last 10 to 15 years, you guys can think about novel research projects of things that were around even our growth data. The first set of EBVs that would have been put out to the American Angus Association, carcass ultrasound data, and the first generation of dollar values that were really put out by the American Angus Association well before AGI was ever established. Currently, we've been focused on traits around our production traits, incurring feed efficiency and dry matter intake into your toolkit for American Angus Association members to use as you feel fit in order to select your individual animals for your individual herd and management conditions. From there, we've had a plethora of tools being added to that management slate of EPDs, something like early summer hair shed, where it can really have a reasonable effect for people that are in that fescue belt and those higher animals that need to be more heat tolerant overall. Pulmonary arterial pressure, or those PAP measurements, that PAP tool that we've been able to put out for those animals that are grazing at high elevations. Foot score confirmation traits, which was a directive that was led by the Breed Improvement Committee, that we needed to try and create a genetic tool to make our cattle more conformationally sound. Finally, we move into that maternal suite of EPDs where we've had a lot of action in the last several years, where we've come out with tools like heifer pregnancy, functional longevity, teat size and udder suspension scores to make sure that we continue to drive value back into that great maternal Angus female that we know that Angus was built on in our foundation of all the improvement that we've been able to make in the beef industry. While a lot of new trait development happens in this novel phenotype research, the one thing that I want to be clear is that not every single tool that we research or new trait or new phenotype data point that we research becomes a new tool. This just happens to be the toolkit that has taken it and came all the way to fruition at the bequest of your Breed Improvement Committee at the American Angus Association. Our next set of research projects that I'm going to engage with you on are these research projects that really talk about genetic evaluation efficiency. So when we think of the annual maintenance or those annual updates that happen to your genetic evaluation, AGI spends a great amount of time in making sure that the maintenance around this evaluation stays stable. These yearly maintenance and performance upgrades have a lot to do with making sure that your genetic evaluation can even be delivered on a weekly basis and making sure that it's optimized to make sure that we can get the correct and accurate answers out of it. One thing that I want to be clear is that when we put a new trait out, or the American Angus Association puts a new trait out that AGI has research and development, our work at AGI isn't done. We continually work on those individual parameters to make sure that they're up to date as you guys select and continue to move your populations in one direction or another. So we'll do things routinely around genetic parameter updates, or those things that we talk about heritability estimates or genetic correlations, making sure that those are up to date, making sure our contemporary group definitions or our adjustment factors for age of dam, age of calf are as updated as possible. And also something directly due to our improvements that we've had in your genetic evaluation around the way we use genomics and genotype data in your genetic evaluation, we talk about those core updates that can really optimize this entire thing. As we talk about other things around genetic evaluation and efficiency, all the research we've done around genotyping in general, the inclusions of genotypes into the genetic evaluation, that research was done right here in AGI alongside external collaborators like we still have today. Those things were pivotal as we continued to refine and reform how we use genomics inside of your genetic evaluation, starting with that multi-step evaluation in 2009, 2010 to now, right? We're using this single-step genomic blunt methodology that was sent out to the membership in 2017. None of those changes were easy, but they were crucial to continue to lead innovation and progress for the American Angus Association's members to have the best, most accurate tools available. And then finally, we do a lot of maintenance, yearly maintenance and performance upgrades to your dollar value calculations, whether it's trying to incorporate a new trait into your maternal wean calf value index, or just simply making sure that those economic assumptions that we partner with CattleFax on are as up to date as possible. These dollar values are actually on their second generation when you start to think about when they were first released in 2004. At that time, we used survey membership data and partnered with Abacus Bio, a world leader in index development, to make sure we were delivering the best tools back to the American Angus Association. Through that survey, we had over 3,000 respondents tell us what traits were important to them, which traits were more important than others, and how they use specific traits in their individual operations. You also told us which traits you're still looking for in order to make sure that you have the utmost profitability in your own organizations. That's where we've actually been able to use survey data to set some of the research priorities alongside that breed improvement committee. The final group of research I want to talk about here today are just the genomic tools and other services that we're able to provide to the individual American Angus Association. One thing that we've been able to do and conduct in AGI on behalf of the American Angus Association is leading Angus to that Angus-specific chip creation in AngusGS that happened in 2018. We've also been able to access your phenotypes or your performance data measurements and your genotypes to find the research content necessary to put on HD50K to continue and level up your predictions. That third hole there is your GeneMax Advantage. How do we help you create value for your commercial cattle customers? Is there a way that we can actually make sure that individual commercial cattle customers have the best turn on their investment of the registered Angus seed stock bulls they're buying from you and bringing into their herd? Things like GeneMax Advantage in the genetic merit scorecard wouldn't be possible without AGI's access to that phenotype and genotype data, creating tools and resources that engage with commercial cattlemen, Angus seed stock producers, and our membership to make sure that you guys are staying as profitable as possible. So we took a little look back at yesterday's research, or the research that continues to be ongoing, because research is never done. But I wanted to highlight a little bit of today's research efforts and where we're headed in the future at the bequest of the American Angus Association. But before we hop into those current research projects, one thing that we always do before we engage with an individual collaborator on a research project is to ensure that the research matters. One of the reasons why I love working at AGI and why I came to the industry after my graduate studies is rather than academia is because I wanted to make sure that the research and the tools and the information that I worked on every single day mattered to the industry, mattered to you as Angus seed stock breeders, and could actually help you solve real-world challenges. Because of that, these are our 3 questions that we ask ourselves before engaging with any research, right, that may come our way. The first question we ask ourselves is, does it support Angus priorities? Quite frankly, we want to make sure that the projects that these external collaborators are either approaching us with or we're approaching external collaborators with, that they support the goals set by the American Angus Association. Those goals, right, are set by the American Angus Association through interactions with the board of directors who represent you all as membership. They are outlined in feedback surveys that help us shape the long-range objectives, the research priorities, the breed improvement topics that we engage in every day. Some of those survey data, right, that we continue to use would have been that 2016 long-range strategic plan where we had numerous focus groups come in, right, from different segments of the industry and give us information and feedback as to how Angus could go into the next several years. In 2019, we talked about that dollar value survey where we engaged over 3,000 participants, both in the commercial and seed stock space, on trait usage and the development surrounding those dollar values. In 2021, we had the Industry Insight Survey that was conducted by Angus Media and CattleFacts that told us at face value where Angus could continue to get better and where it was doing a good job. And then finally in 2025, we've conducted another membership survey, right, that's highlighted research is once again a main priority for you all as members for us to continue to engage with. The second question that we ask ourselves once we've determined whether or not it supports Angus priorities is that, do we even have the right data? We have mountains and millions of data points here at the American Angus Association that AGI can access, right, to do research or help external collaborators do research, but sometimes we don't have the right data. So the question that we ask ourselves is the information already available, or do we have to create the data streams to make it available for us to do the research on and eventually create a product out the other end that somebody could use to increase their profitability? And then finally, that question is, will it help you as Angus members stay ahead? I think when we talk about these external collaborations or these research projects that we engage in from an American Angus Association and AGI standpoint is that we want to make sure that the research that we're doing internally matches what's happening in the beef industry and maybe the challenges that we'll face down the road. One of the questions that I always keenly center on is, will it help make Angus members and users of Angus genetics and their customers stay competitive? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here in our aim to do, is to make sure that not only Angus members stay competitive within the beef industry, but the beef industry in general stays competitive to the consumer as we move down this road. So this is a list of all the ongoing research projects we have with external collaborators at the time being. This research list ebbs and flows as we bring on new collaborators or as projects finish up and students graduate or things come to a close. But you can see here that we work with numerous land-grant universities and other groups that allow us to really engage in a multitude of different research projects that help us reach towards those research priorities that the American Angus Association has done. As I'm sure a lot of you know, the University of Georgia has been a key research partner for us here at AGI, as we actually license the UGA BLUP F90 family of programs to run your genetic evaluation every year. So when we talk about genetic optimization and efficiency, we lean into the University of Georgia pretty hard in order to make sure that our software is as up-to-date as possible to provide the best predictions for the American Angus Association as well as other AGI clients. We have a large body of work with Kansas State University evolving around a really important topic of fertility. We've engaged with Purdue University on both our functional longevity research that was just reported out here last summer, as well as some mature weight modeling to make sure that those predictions are as best as possible. We have a large multi-institutional project in that investigating the genotype by environment interactions that engage University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Georgia, Purdue University, University of Tennessee, Michigan State University, as well as several other people that we've worked with over the years, including Colorado State University, Oklahoma State, AGBU, and University of Tennessee, and a new project that we just added after the September board meeting in 25 of North Carolina State University, where we're going to be focusing on ensuring that we keep tracking and monitoring inbreeding response. As we think about the funding for some of those projects and how that funding comes to be, obviously if we have students working on these projects or researchers working on these projects as external collaborations, there's a cost to doing some of those research projects. Now, many of our research projects that we do come to us in an in-kind nature. And what that means is there's no real exchange of funds. So those are easy projects for us to engage in, because as long as they align with the priorities of the American Angus Association and we can ensure that we're doing and it's helping us make our genetic evaluation better, those are projects where researchers, collaborators will come to us. They have a student who's very talented and eager to learn. We have lots of data that we have access to through the American Angus Association and lots of questions about that data. And we can actually do that as an exchange of services. And that's a really cool opportunity for us to not only, get really cool research projects answered, but it's a great area for us to interact with the next generation of animal scientists to allow us to bring the best talent back into this organization. Another funding source is, quite frankly, AGI. We have a research budget, just like Certified Angus Beef has a research budget, the Angus Foundation has a research budget, and the American Angus Association has a research budget. When we look at some of those projects, for instance, that UGA project that's listed there, that was a UGA student that actually came on to AGI as an intern, and we were able to invest in that young person's research career with internship dollars and able to get a really great project done that has actually already been implemented for our GeneMax calculations and predictions. That University of Illinois project is funded by AGI, where we're going out and we're looking at commercial phenotyping and validation of those dollar value indexes and assumptions. This is going to be a great project for us to get access to real-world commercial data, where quite frankly, if we were looking at funding sources like USDA, they probably wouldn't see commercial data collection as a top priority for funding to send out to the industry. So that research needs to happen somewhere, and we're going to have to continue to invest AGI or American Angus Association research dollars in order to get those types of fundamental research projects done that will continue to have an impact down the road. Finally, that Heart Health project has been a co-project between Colorado State University and AGI, where we're getting into the plants and collecting some of those heart remodeling scores, and we'll talk a little bit more about that project here in a bit. Obviously, there's grant dollars awarded through the United States Department of Agriculture. There's different types of grants that are out there. There's NEFA grants, IDEAS grants, and I'm sure another plethora of grants. Those are the two that our external collaborators are interacting with right now, where KSU has a large NEFA grant that they're working on some of that fertility data with. That IDEAS project, right, the project where we're trying to understand why genetics behave the way they do and interact the way they do to certain environmental and management conditions, different various production settings. That's something that we're investigating there, and that was a large multi-institutional grant that we're a part of. The Angus Foundation has research as one of its 3 pillars, and it continues to provide research funding for multitude of projects, not just genetic projects. Obviously here today on the screen that you see today are all genetic projects that AGI is leading on behalf of the American Angus Association. But at the end of the day, the Angus Association can fund anything from consumer quality to genetic projects to reproduction projects to nutrition projects. And over the years, they have assessed funding to multiple different areas. Then we get over to the right hand of your screen and we start to look at some of the other more alternative funding streams that we've seen as of late. Some of those include the Bezos Earth Fund grant, alongside the Meat and Livestock Australia grant funds that we have around methane and efficiency research in that large international body of work that we'll talk about here in a second. We've had funding come in from different groups like Certified Angus Beef, Cargill, and 5 Rivers Cattle Feeding to support the Heart Health Initiative. The 5 Rivers Cattle Feeding is an in-kind funding source where we were able to access commercial cattle in their feed yards to get into the plants and score those hearts. We have multiple different researchers that want to work with us, and honestly, not just AGI, but they want to work with Angus, the best breed in the industry. And we had an individual professor that came to us on a young, early researcher funding program from University of Georgia who wanted to look at the gut microbiome and feed efficiency research. And finally, the National Association of Animal Breeders Doak Fellowship Scholarship, right, supported Elizabeth Donaldson, who did the work at Kansas State University on cow maintenance efficiency using gas flux records. So we have all this project, we understand a little bit more about the funding, but what are the goals and the projected outcomes from these individual purposeful projects? So as you can see there, we've grouped them back into our 3 buckets. Our first bucket there is genetic evaluation, efficiency, and optimization. So basically we feel like these projects can help make our individual genetic tools that we are taking care of on behalf of the American Angus Association membership better. Because first and foremost, we know you guys need the best tools in your hands if you're going to utilize them to make selection, breeding, or marketing decisions. From there, we have novel phenotype research. Remember, a lot of those original novel phenotype research projects at the direction of the Breed Improvement Committee were really there to continue to develop new traits, add new traits to that toolkit as we moved down and found more ways to provide you all as American Angus Association members and your commercial cattle customers with the tools necessary to improve profitability on your own farms and ranches. But as we continue to move down this novel phenotype research, we may find that some of these new phenotypes, maybe they're not to create a new tool, maybe they're to augment a tool that's already there. And those are the types of questions that we'll continue to ask ourselves as we move through some of these novel phenotype research projects. And then finally, genomic tools and other services, just the continued reference to, hey, what else do we have to be knowledgeable about and have tools available for that aren't necessarily just another expected progeny difference or another dollar value. We look at that last project that started at NC State and the University of Florence, right? Inbreeding in response to external stress factors. We know that as we continue to increase the amount of artificial insemination or AI sires that are being used in our industry, that as we increase the use of individual AI sires, our risk of increasing the amount of inbreeding in our population is also going to go up. We need to continue to monitor and track that inbreeding rate and understand what it's doing from an inbreeding depression on actual true performance in order to make sure that we're providing you all as American Angus Association members the best tools and the best information possible to make those breeding decisions. So the first bucket I want to get into is this big project bucket of genetic evaluation and optimization. The goal out of this bucket is to really provide the most accurate tools to association members as possible And what this depiction down here is targeting is that we really work very closely at AGI to do the research and development on those genetic evaluation, optimization, and efficiency things. But we work really closely with the Angus Association's Information Systems and Performance Programs Department to deliver them back out to the American Angus Association membership, while being guided by the Breed Improvement Committee in order to make sure that your genetic evaluation is as accurate as possible. So a lot of this has to do with continuous improvement, new trait development. When you think about the things that we were able to release back in May of 2025 around the new maternal tools, updated dollar values. When we think about something like core updates, you'll hear us talk about Core 24. That's the last time we did a core update. We'll be heading into and doing a Core 26 update. That's all about genetic evaluation efficiency. If you look at that little chart down there in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, basically what that's showing you is the efficiency of your genetic evaluation. If we don't keep up and maintain your genetic evaluations and keep it the most current with the most current data, what that does is it makes those predictions harder to solve. If those predictions are harder to solve, it takes longer. If it takes longer, we're at risk, right, as the American Angus Association and AGI, of not providing out to American Angus Association members a weekly genetic evaluation to make your decisions and market your cattle. That's obviously not a place we want to be. And so we work very keenly on making sure that your genetic evaluation is optimized in order to make sure that we are working towards the standards that you all have set for us as members. The next one I want to touch on is one of the most exciting projects, right, that I think we actually have on the docket right now. Is it's focusing on validation, right? Commercial data for dollar value validation. We know we have loads of data from the seed stock space, but in talking to you all as members and talking internally, we know that we need commercial data points in here to make sure that we can validate and assess, right, how well our tools are working in real-world commercial industry environments. This is one of the first projects that we're engaging on for dollar value validation, where we've gotten access to the University of Illinois 600 Angus-based commercial females that we've been able to selectively mate through planned matings. The first batch of females, the first calving cycle is happening right now. We're going to follow the terminal progeny, right, or the cattle that will be killed and harvested all the way to the end. We'll have females in this study going back into the herd over this 5-year project. We're going to have the opportunity to collect a lot of commercially focused data. Will that be current data that we already have, like feed intake, carcass data, other maternal trait data, and maybe we'll find some new and novel phenotypes that we want to take advantage of through this project as we continue to selectively mate these individual females. This is a really exciting project where it's building a base of commercial data for us, and I'd love to see commercial data continue to get amplified to support this already great database that you as American Angus Association members have built. Our next project is our Heart Health Project, and this was really a call from the industry where we were seeing congestive heart failure deaths happening at lower elevations. We know with PAP EPD and some of the things that happen as far as high altitude disease in cattle that are grazing at 5,000 feet or above have always been there. But we started seeing some of these deaths at lower elevations. And this is something that the feed yard, especially in today's current environment of high cattle prices, have become and continue to become more keened in and focused on. We've been working on this project for almost a handful of years at this point. And what we did is we actually, alongside all of those partners, right, that are alongside that bottom of your screen, had to work outside of the members' data, outside of the seed stock population, because quite frankly, you all are not killing your breeding stock in order for us to get heart scores, heart remodeling scores on those cattle. So we had to reach out to the feed yard space, we had to reach out to the commercial cattle industry space, we had to reach out to our partners in our packing industry to be able to get into these individual packing plants and collect these scores on these individual animals. The idea is that we can collect a reference population of data, including heart remodeling scores, genetic data like genotypes, and other individual animal data, including days on feed, whether or not we can capture birth dates on these animals, how are these animals treated prior to coming to the plant, and understand whether or not there is a heritability or a genetic component as to why some animals' hearts remodel more quickly than others. We also want to look at the genetic relationship between heart remodeling and some of your performance and carcass traits. Think growth, carcass weight, marbling, feed intake. How do those things all relate together? And then finally, the Breed Improvement Committee has asked us to put out and try to work towards a prototype tool. So this doesn't mean that we're going to put out a tool for the sake of putting out a tool. We've got to make sure that this is as an accurate tool as possible, but that really is the goal and the directive that has been sent down to AGI as we continue to go out, collect, analyze, and report these data points back to the industry. The next project is one that I'm keenly excited about as well, is because it makes a huge economic impact on your farms and ranches, and that's really our focus on male and female fertility. I think we've always had a keen focus on female fertility, and that comes out in some of the tools that we have available today for you all as members, but I think we've not done ourselves any service by not focusing on male fertility. Kansas State University has a program that focuses on male fertility. It's led by Dr. Megan Rolfe, where she's been able to go out and we've been able to connect her and her research team with individual Angus producers to get breeding soundness exam records back to them so they can go ahead and they can analyze those breeding soundness exam records. What we're trying to find is if there's any genetic component to those BSC exams and whether or not opening up that data collection to the larger membership would make sense if we see good preliminary results up front. The next one is the continued research that we have around the World Angus evaluation. As you guys know, we run your data here at the American Angus Association alongside data at Angus Australia and the Canadian Angus Association because, quite frankly, U.S. genetics are used all around the globe. More importantly, if we have similar data sets in the same breed across country, we can actually bring that data together to make sure that we can leverage that information to the best of its ability, especially for something like lowly heritable traits. When we think of something like functional longevity and heifer pregnancy, they both have a heritability estimate of less than 10%. That means that the more data that we have, in most cases, the better off we're going to be at creating accurate genetic predictions. Our next phases of research with the World Angus evaluation revolve around those two traits. And then finally, rounding out our focus on male and female fertility, I wanted to touch on the haplotypes affecting fertility project, where we're actually using all the data that you guys have already reported and trying to squeeze more information out of it. This is a project that we do in-house here at AGI on behalf of the American Angus Association because we want to be sure that American Angus Association members and their customers can leverage these results to their fullest ability. What we're trying to do is we're interrogating and we're researching your big genomic database that is now built up to 2.2 million genotypes in order to engage in this fertility research where we're tracking chunks of DNA in your pedigree, trying to understand why we don't see a whole lot of calves with two sets of the same chunk of DNA. If you want to learn more about that project, I know we have a research webinar on Angus University to dive in a bit further. And then finally, I wanted to briefly touch on the methane efficiency research. This is a research project that's definitely gained a lot of attraction in the last several months. But the project itself is fairly straightforward and fairly rudimentary when you think about just building databases, analyzing data, and trying to understand what the genetic propensity of something is. So this is focused around methane and other gas flux data, where we're actually going to go out, we're going to collect methane emission records through the American Angus Association membership, where we're going to ask for volunteers, measure the cows that they have out on grazing pastures, and then analyze the results. The reason that we were interested when this international group at AgBoo first approached us from Australia is because it's been a pretty elusive creature to get at grazing intake on females out on pasture. We also know that intake on pasture definitely has an effect on profitability on your individual farms and ranches. From recent research around methane emissions and efficiency, we found in dairy that actually some of this gas flux data that we're collecting through this type of research has a high correlation, or at least a correlation, moderate correlation to intake in those types of animals. And so what we're trying to do is trying to understand if we can collect this gas flux data, can we actually use that as a measurement of cow intake for cows grazing on grass? Another standpoint that we can look at here is using the methane emission data to kind of look at the metabolic energy efficiency, right? Really trying to parse apart some of the cow maintenance energy costs that are happening in our females. We know that we've always used mature weight and maternal milk, right, as indicators of how efficient our animals will be, but this may be an opportunity for us to get and dive in a little bit deeper in maintenance energy and maybe actually start to rank cows as to which cows do a better job of utilizing the forage intake that they have to put additional pounds of calf out on pasture, keep a higher body condition score so she can get rebred quicker, and really starts to catalyze some of the questions that we can answer on this cow-calf space. This is a 5-year project. We do have a research page up on the AGI website. If you go to angus.org/AGI/research, you're going to see all the methane efficiency research work right there, and we'll continue to update that as we move through this 5-year project. But I'm going to probably have a little bit of a spoiler alert for you right up front that I'm assuming at the end of this 5-year project, we're going to have just as many questions then as we do today. However, that's what we do research, that's why we engage in research, and that's one of the reasons why this particular project was attractive, right, and aligned with the research priorities. Obviously, we're really excited at AGI to be able to lead these projects on behalf of the American Angus Association's membership. But the first thing that we always have to take account for is making sure that we're protecting the members' investment. And we take data security very seriously here at 3201. And when we work with external collaborators, we ensure that we have the highest data security standards that we know available. One of the things that we do is we make sure that those individual collaborators sign 2 agreements. One is a research data access agreement, which basically outlines what they can and cannot do with that data, and the fact that the data that they will be provided can only be used for the question that they've proposed. The second one surrounds the server agreement that gives them access to this dedicated research server that's homed right here at 3201 Frederick Avenue. Research servers actually analyze the data that they get access to through AGI and the American Angus Association on a computer that's just right upstairs. Your data doesn't leave 3201 in the American Angus Association headquarters. There's no uploads or downloads to that server. There's not even an internet connection on that server. And quite frankly, there's nothing that's going to happen on that server that your American Angus Association's information systems team isn't going to know about. AGI reviews any publications, any results that would come out of these external collaborations, and we take the security around these collaborations very seriously. When you want to look at all the individual steps that we're taking to protect your investment, the first thing that we're going to start with are those external collaborators' project proposals. Priority alignment and assessment funnel is key. Does the research that they're proposing or that we've went out and sought out individual groups to actually do a research proposal, does it matter to the American Angus Association and to the larger beef industry? If those research collaboration and project proposals are aligned, we'll have them sign those 2 agreements that we just talked about. Once those agreements are signed, AGI will work directly with those external collaborators to submit a data request to the American Angus Association's Information Systems team. Information Systems team will then review that request, ask the necessary questions of AGI, the external collaborators, and they may even go talk to the executive leadership at the American Angus Association to make sure they have clarity on what exactly that data is going to be used for. Once they make and build that data set, they'll send it back to AGI. AGI will ensure that only the data necessary for this project are in those data files before giving the okay to the American Angus Association's Information Systems team. From there, IS will place that information and data onto this external research server, basically this computer that lives right here at the American Angus Association. They'll provide login credentials to those external collaborators that are password protected and only get them to the data that they need for their individual project. As those external collaborators log in, analyze their data, as results start to come out, those result files have to be requested through the association's information systems team to be pulled out of that server. Remember, no uploads or downloads. We'll send those results files back to those external collaborators. Throughout the life of the project, the American Angus Association and AGI will have checkpoints on that research and on that data and all those results files. ensuring that we have a full understanding of the results that are coming out, making sure that the project and the objectives, and if we think that those external collaborators need to go back and check something, dig into something more, we have another question that has come about because of the questions that were answered before, that we make sure that we hold them accountable to the project proposal that they placed in front of us. And then finally, before anything would go to publication, whether that be a peer-reviewed article, a set of slides that are going to be presented at a meeting, or even a research brief, AGI would review those on behalf of the American Angus Association to make sure that American Angus genetics are accurately represented in those peer-reviewed publications. So we talked about the ongoing research, we talked about historic research projects, and we talked about how we interact with external collaborators. So how are we going to continue to have success, and how are we going to achieve it together? The one thing I know about the American Angus Association when I walk through the doors every day is that we're rooted in a lot of legacy. We have a lot of history here, and we're built on the founders of this breed that have really gotten us to where we are today, but we're driven by innovation. Angus has been on top of the industry, and specifically the genetic space, because it's always had the best data and tools, it's had the best research and development, and it's had the best people. And I can bet you that AGI intends to keep you there, right there in the center of the beef genetic space. But I will say that the research landscape is changing. We have more data that's being collected outside of breed associations than ever before. And because of that, more research and development is happening outside of breed associations as well. So it's our job at AGI to make sure that we're finding available funding dollars and we're being able to assess the information necessary to make sure that all the right tools are put into the hands of the American Angus Association members and users of Angus genetics. And that's how we want to continue to drive innovation. Because if there's one thing that I know, that Angus's legacy has always been innovation. And it comes to me because this book, A Historic Angus Journey, sits on my desk every single day. And as I thumb through the pages to find some historical context, or I read my next chapter about the innovation that has taken place in this organization, it's nothing but energizing to see how we've continued through this association, its evolution of its creation of its entities, and how we've continued to work together as a staff and with cattlemen to be able to drive this breed and this industry forward. And I know that we're going to maintain that level of excellence as we can continue to go forward. So with that, I'm going to invite you guys to take a look at the resources that have been provided through that QR code if you want to dive into any more information around some of those research projects that we've already communicated about to some extent. If you guys ever have any questions, concerns, or just want to dialogue about some of this research that's taking place, or maybe you have the next great idea, be sure to reach out to me, any other of your AGI or association staff, and we'd be more than happy to have some really fruitful conversation. Thank you.